Rabbi David Wolpe tells a story of the time that Ralph Waldo Emerson went to church on a Sunday morning, and he came out of the service and he was mightily displeased with the minister's sermon. He said that the minister gave nothing of his own life experience. His words were just ideas, just texts, just passages. It was bloodless, it was lifeless. And Emerson complained, why doesn't the preacher use his life experience to connect with my life experience, to connect with our life experience? So channeling the critique of Ralph Waldo Emerson, I am here to say that 2 weeks ago in Lake Como, Italy, Shira and I were blessed to stand at the wedding of our son, Nat, to his husband, Davide Russo. Davide Russo is from Italy. His family is from Italy. We did the wedding in Italy. And I'm here to talk about this, not just to say that the wedding was joyful and beautiful, which it was, but because I experienced a deep struggle on the day of my son's wedding and in the days since. And I share that struggle with you in the event that you might have your own version of that struggle. So what's the struggle? The struggle is a creative tension and contradiction in my heart and in my soul. On the one hand, to stand with your adult child under the wedding canopy is just unimaginable, deep blessing. Now, you know that every Shabbat we offer a prayer to our sons and daughters, to our grandsons and granddaughters at their bar or bat mitzvah, that in your own time, may you stand with your beloved under the wedding canopy. Now, when you say this to 13-year-olds, they look at me, if they're listening at all. And frequently, they're not listening at all. But if they're listening at all, when I get to the part about the wedding canopy, they're just like, what did you say? Wedding canopy? Do you know, Rabbi, that I'm 13 years old? 13-year-olds don't get it. But 33-year-olds get it. Nat and Davide got it. And all their friends and family who came from far away, as well as those who were in Italy, got the profound blessing of making a covenantal commitment to walk in faithful love with the choice of your heart in the presence of God and community, on the one hand. But on the other hand, Nat and Davide, Shira and me, and our whole family were profoundly aware of the reality that the rights of LGBTQ plus families, like ours, may well be very much in jeopardy, and that the future may well look very different from the past as a result of, and in the wake of, the Dobbs Supreme Court case, which reversed Roe v. Wade. Dobbs stands for two propositions: that rights that had been enjoyed for a long time by a lot of people can be taken away with the sweep of justice's hands, and that long-settled precedent, which guaranteed those rights, can just get reversed. And that happened, of course, in Dobbs to the rights of women to reproductive freedom and reproductive autonomy. But in the concurrence of Justice Clarence Thomas, That concurrence was broadly taken to mean that the same principles, rights can get taken away, big-time precedents can get reversed, the world could look very different, was taken to mean that the rights of same-sex couples are imperiled. Now, in 2015, you know that the Supreme Court in Obergefell ruled that the 14th Amendment of the United States Constitution, both the Due Process Clause and the Equal Protection Clause, guarantee to same-sex couples the same rights to get married as heterosexual couples in all 50 states and in the District of Columbia. But that opinion, written by Justice Kennedy, Anthony Kennedy, was decided by the slimmest of majorities, 5-4, and you know that it is a very different court now, and people who have gay people in their family very much worry that this new super-empowered court is going to do to Obergefell what Dobbs did to Roe. And if you think, oh, don't be hysterical, days after Dobbs, the Attorney General of Texas, Ken Paxton, said at a public press conference that the state of Texas is, in his words, willing and able to bring to the Supreme Court, to this newly empowered conservative majority, Texas laws which would seek to criminalize same-sex intimacy and would seek to prohibit same-sex marriage. Now, what am I to do with Texas when I'm under the chuppah at Lake Como? What am I to do with Justice Clarence Thomas's concurring opinion and Attorney General Ken Paxton when Shira and I are marrying off Nat and Davide? I can tell you that on our family thread before the wedding, we were writing things to each other like, maybe now is the time we start really thinking about moving to Israel. If America criminalizes the intimacy that is our gay sons, Nat is married to Davide, Sam is also gay, has a partner named Josh. If that becomes criminal under the laws of Texas, and if the Supreme Court says that's okay, that's just a big deal. And in the days before the wedding, we're thinking out loud, do we move to Israel? And thinking how ironic that we would move to Israel as refugees, not from religious persecution, but from persecution as a gay family. A live conversation and a live worry. Along with, well, if we do that, but what about our commitments to LGBTQ families in the rest of the country, and particularly in red states like Texas, that can't do that? So all of those questions, which are very disturbing and very open and unresolved, were totally rattling around in my head, in my heart, and in my soul when Nat and Davide got married in Lake Como on a beautiful and perfect day. Now, to channel my inner Ralph Waldo Emerson, I bring you this story not because your family has that problem. I bring you that story because many of us, if not most of us, if not all of us, have your own versions of a similar problem. For example, it's summer. You're on vacation. You're at Cape Cod or the Berkshires or Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket or New Hampshire or Vermont, you're at the beach, you're at a lake, you're at a pond, you're at a pool, you're on a hike. The nature is gorgeous, the sun is shining, you're with people that you love. You come home and you have a delicious meal, a barbecue, great food, you open a bottle of wine, you're sharing really great moment with loved ones. And after the hike is over, after the beach day is over, after the beautiful meal is over, after you do the dishes, you go on your iPad to read about the world, to catch up on the news. And it's very dizzying, and it's very vertigo-inducing. How am I supposed to integrate these harrowing headlines with the day I just had? How do I understand the relationship between the joy of my world and the pain of our world? And this dissonance is every day. There's no day in which this dissonance does not happen. And this dissonance is in every place, and there is no place in which this dissonance does not happen. And I can prove that with just 2 words. 2 words makes the case QED conclusively. Highland Park. Highland Park is Newton. They are us. We are them. Highland Park is to Illinois what Newton is to the Commonwealth. And if it can happen there, and it did, it can certainly happen here. It can certainly happen to us. So how do we even think about, do we go to parades anymore on the 4th of July? A 4th of July parade is not a sanctuary. What does that mean for how we live our lives? And the ubiquity of violence, the randomness of violence and mayhem and death that Highland Park represents just casts a pall on everything. I'll give you an example of where it casts a pall, where it really should not cast a pall, but it casts a pall. Let's leave the headlines. Let's go to the sports pages. That's what I read nowadays anyway. So I'm reading a story about Bradley Beal, who is a basketball player, a guard for the Washington Wizards. And the story was that Bradley Beal was at a press conference with the owner of the Washington Wizards to celebrate his max contract, as they say in NBA jargon. His max contract is a $251 million contract for 5 years, okay? And it should be just purely happy. And the owner of the Washington Wizards says, hey, I'm here to say that loyalty is alive and well in the world of professional sports. And you, Bradley Beal, you've been such a great player for the Wizards organization, and you've been such a great citizen in Washington area. It is our privilege now to repay your loyalty with loyalty, this $251 million contract. Thank you, Bradley Beal. And then a reporter asks a question that should be a slow pitch over the middle. She says, Mr. Beal, how do you feel about your new contract? And it's not a slow pitch over the middle. He says, listen, I'm married, and my wife and I have 2 young children. A third is on its way, and I'm obviously black. And this kind of contract means the kind of generational wealth the black families, the families that look like mine, have not had. So yes, that's good, but I'm also from St. Louis. And in St. Louis, from July 1 to July 5, there have been 22 mass shootings. 22 mass shootings from July 1st to July 5th in the town that I come from. So how can I enjoy this contract? And his question is, in a way, all of our question in our own different form. How can I enjoy what is right with my world when there is so much that is wrong with our world? And that was the creative tension in my head and heart and soul in Lake Como on July 3rd. How can I enjoy Nat and Davide's wedding? How can I be happy when there are so many storm clouds in the sky? That question, how can I be happy when there are storm clouds in the sky? What is a helpful response to it? So it turns out, I found anyway, for me, I'll just share this. I don't have the answer. Obviously, there's no one answer. I'll share with you my answer that worked for me on the day of July 3rd and that has worked for me in the days since July 3rd. How do we be happy with storm clouds in the sky? So, you know that at the very end of the wedding, there's this iconic moment where the groom shatters the glass. In our case, Nat and Davide both at the same time shattered the glass. And for most of Jewish history, up until very, very, very recently, what would happen is that the groom would shatter the glass, and everybody would yell, Mazel Tov! And the couple would kiss, and they would walk out of the chuppah, and the parents would join them, and the bridesmaids and the groomsmen would join them, and there would be happy music, and then wine and hors d'oeuvres were served. And what happened to the glass? It was a non-event. It was literally swept away in the dustbin of history. But there is a new tweak to an old ritual. Here's what happens now. This is the glass that Nat and Davide stepped on at the end of their wedding. And the glass is collected in this bag. We took it back from Lake Como. And we're going to give it to them, but I'll tell you why we took it back from Lake Como. This, to me, is the answer to happiness when there's storm clouds in the heavens. What is this? So there's a great mosaic artist named Mia Schoen. Mia does mosaic art in Israel and also in Boston. And she once, of course, she grew up here. Always remember that her bat mitzvah was April 1. I forget the year, but I remember the date. It's April 1. And Mia gave a lecture where she talks about the theory and practice of mosaic art. She said it's comprised of three things. One, that something is whole and perfect. Two, what was whole and perfect is broken and shattered and reduced to fragments. And three, mosaic art is taking those fragments, those broken pieces, putting it together creatively, repurposing it, and creating something new that has wholeness and holiness and beauty. And what happens to this is it becomes a Kiddush cup of broken pieces. A Kiddush cup of broken pieces. Which means that at the end of the wedding ceremony, what a couple is left with is a Kiddush cup of broken pieces. Which means that Nat and Davide don't know what the concurrence of Justice Thomas in Dobbs is going to mean for their future. And they don't know what Attorney General Ken Paxton is going to mean for their future. And they don't know what's going to happen in Texas. And they don't know how what's going to happen in Texas is going to affect the rights of same-sex couples throughout America. There's a lot of uncertainty. It just is. But here's what we do know. We know what to do in the face of that uncertainty. We create a Kiddush cup of broken pieces. We have Shabbos dinner. We invite friends and family. We sanctify time. We affirm love and hope and future. On a perfect day in Lake Como, every day in Newton, what will your Kiddush cup of broken pieces look like? Shabbat Shalom.